This video contains information that will forever change how you view Shanks. But this does come with a big warning because these are going to be spoilers from Film Red. Yes, this film does contain canon information, and yes, it is massive. So if you want to wait a few months for it to be released, then here's your warning. But this is simply too big and too exciting not to talk about. Hello and welcome to the Grand Line Review, your source for everything One Piece. My name is Liam, and in the last 24 hours, we've learned more about Shanks than in the last 25 years combined. We know how he met Roger, we know how he fights, which completely revolutionizes Haki, we know his plans for the new era, and so much more. Yes, Shanks fans are eating pretty damn good at the moment, provided they can actually get to the restaurant, that is, because Film Red still won't have a proper global release for 2 to 3 months. But let's dive into this suspiciously red pool with the untold origins of Shanks. According to Volume 4 Billion, which is a limited edition bonus gift given to attendees, Shanks was found in a treasure chest by Roger and Rayleigh when he was a mere 1 year old, which is already giving me some very nostalgic vibes because Shanks is famously not the only chest child in One Piece. Quite famously, Trafalgar Law was stuffed into a chest in order to save his life by Don Quixote Rocinante, a man who was just too good for this world, but not quite good enough at applying his own makeup, as he only ever seemed to finish half of his face. Why do I bring this up though? Because it seems highly likely that Shanks became a treasure baby via similar circumstances. Because Roger and Rayleigh found Shanks at God Valley, which very notably featured one of the greatest battles in the entire history of One Piece. So if Shanks' parents were on the island with their young red-headed spawn, and I imagine they plonked him in a chest in a desperate attempt to protect him. But this also confirms a long-standing suspicion that we've had in the fanbase, because it was always just a little bit too perfect, that the commencement of Shanks' existence happened to line up nigh on perfectly with the events of God Valley. And it was also hinted at during Odin's flashback. There was a scene where Roger was holding Hiyori and he said, I haven't spent time with a baby in ages. And that's because his own baby had already grown up. And then grown back down again because young Shanks' height continuity in One Piece is a bit of a mess. But this means that Roger was far more than just a mentor to Shanks. He was probably the closest thing Shanks actually had to a father, which fits One Piece perfectly because one of its major themes is found family and how it can be just as, if not even stronger than blood relatives. And when you think about it, Shanks was pretty much born into Whitebeard's dream. He grew up free on the relatively open seas with a massive collection of found family. And look, I don't want to say that he was jelly or anything, but Whitebeard worked his whole life to gain what Shanks was fatefully gifted as a toddler. But being found on God Valley does have some major implications, because this is implied to have been an island populated by the world nobles, or if not populated natively, then there was at least a whole gaggle of celestial bunglenuts present during the battle with the Rocks pirates. Plus the whole God Valley, and it's a pretty straightforward hint that yeah, this was probably celestial territory. So is Shanks a world noble? Well, here's what the 5 Elder Stars had to say about that. There is a scene where our gatekeepers of history state that Shanks is a member of the Fearland family, which fits very well into the world noble designation, because families and names are priorities above all else in this society. Completely counter to what our protagonists explore, where they're all about found family, our antagonists only care about blood. But Fearland Shanks, world noble by blood, is an idea that makes a lot of sense when we consider that he had the ability to organize a meeting with the 5 Elder Stars, something that would have been insanely difficult for any non-nobleman to accomplish. In the manga, the elders say, look, we only accepted this meeting because you are you. And I guess that made some sense at the time. Shanks is, of course, one of the most powerful pirates in the world and a natural global leader. None of that matters. The elders accepted the meeting because Shanks is one of them. And to the world nobles, blood comes before all else. They show Shanks this respect because he has that birth requirement. And it could go even further than that, because perhaps the Fearland family was particularly highly ranked within noble society, so that name may carry even more weight. I should say that this far from confirms that Shanks is indeed a world noble, but the Jenga Tower of evidence is looking like it's suspiciously about to topple in that direction. Now, one big question I do have is, does this mean that Buggy was also found on God Valley? Shanks and Buggy are the exact same age, being 39 apiece, and they both seem to have been raised by the Roger pirates. So perhaps this here God Valley chest was big enough for two, carrying the twin babies of Shanks and Buggy, is what I would say, but there is a slight problem here. Shanks and Buggy actually have different birth locations as denoted by the Viviacard databook. Buggy was allegedly born in the Grand Line, however Shanks is said to be born in West Blue, which is the only thing that currently holds me back from the whole Shanks being a world noble thing, because why would he have been born in West Blue? Regardless of how or why, itty bitty babby Shanks, in an event that we're going to describe as somehow, managed to migrate from West Blue to wherever God Valley is in just under a year of his life. I should also say that this may be one of those things where the Vivia cards may not be so accurate. They're not written by Oda, however, for such a major character character, I imagine that they would have to check the details with Oda. I suppose one possibility is that God Valley was actually located in West Blue. However, if that were the case, I feel like it would be far more well known and significantly harder to cover up if it was an island in one of the 4 general seas. Another option is that Oda changed his plans, but I have a hard time believing that he didn't have the history for a character like Shanks already perfectly laid out. Something I also love is that fans have already begun rampant speculation of this Fearland name, and I've been seeing a lot of Fearland D Shanks floating around as his potential true name, which honestly might be a fun idea. The D clan is of course the other famous batch of families in the One Piece world, and it could add some nice context to the moment between Roger and Shanks when he returned from Laugh Tale. You know when Shanks is all crying and stuff after Roger told him a thing? That thing could have been about the Fearland family, whether it was D or World Noble related. As a bit of an intriguing historical note, we also have a Shanks bounty revelation, as 12 years ago this man was worth 1,004 million berries. The 4 million seems a bit odd, but Oda never does round bounties. The system usually stacks on top of itself and you end up with some odd numbers from previous bounties. But also Oda usually likes to use these numbers as a pun via Goro Owase. For example, there's a string of numbers in Shanks' current bounty being 489, which can be read as Shiaku, Shaku, which sounds kind of like saying Shanks in Japanese, Shankusu. I don't know if there's a pun in this previous bounty because my Japanese is too pathetic to figure it out. But this is noteworthy because this is what Shanks was already worth when he met Luffy. While they were in East Blue, Shanks was a man notorious enough to be worth over 1 billion berries, which makes losing his arm to the Lord of the Coast even more questionable in retrospect, especially since he is not a fruit user and he is now the undisputed master of all of the Hakis. Oh, and speaking of Haki, actually, this is huge. Film Red reveals that Shanks is known as the killer of observation Haki, as he is able to hide his presence from prying eyes, even those very special eyes that have access to Future Sight. In fact, this is posited as a direct counter to Future Sight, and I bet this is the reason why Katakuri was put in Film Red. When he was first announced, he was a welcome but seemingly random addition to the cast. However, he's clearly there as a vehicle for Shanks to demonstrate his power. Katakuri famously kind of over-relies on his Future Sight, so having that cut off by Shanks must be quite an oh damn moment. To have this opponent, who was once portrayed as practically invincible, reduced to some significantly more unvincible circumstances by Shanks. I love this idea though because it opens up some room to expand abilities. Specifically for Luffy, who appeared to have reached a ceiling of power in the series, having mastered and advanced all 3 brands of Haki. So this concept of counter Haki means that Luffy still has more room to grow. It also continues to make Shanks a very fascinating contrast against Blackbeard, a man who can counter Haki versus a man who can counter devil fruits, and neither of their powers are particularly useful against one another. Shanks is not a fruit user, and Blackbeard currently appears not to be a heavy Haki user and is much more fruit reliant. So if there is anyone in this world currently capable of bringing Shanks down, it's looking more and more like Blackbeard. And there is one more absolutely massive Shanks revelation to come, but first I want to talk a bit about the meta situation that Film Red has created. So all around good boy Arthur on Twitter confirmed some time ago that manga events were specifically crafted to coincide with the release of Film Red. And the exact wording is, Shueisha wanted to debut One Piece Film Red alongside the start of the final saga, but despite some luck involved, Oda helped fit the timing. So basically, yes, there is some good timing involved, but Oda did structure the manga to complement the release of Film Red. And I have to say that's kind of disappointing to hear. I love the One Piece films, they're always such great experiences, especially in a cinema, but to hear that this film project has impacted the actual story is, well, it's just not great. And I think that's why a lot of people do maybe feel like the ending of Wano is a bit rushed, because it probably was. Also that we could have this precisely timed marketing moment. Furthermore, I do think that having such huge information revealed in the film is a bit of a kick in the nuts for the global community. If you're not Japan or France, you're still about 2 to 3 months away from the opportunity to see this film. And in 2022, look, I just don't see a good reason why a simultaneous global release can't happen. The reason is obviously licensing and corporate agreements and the boring stuff like that. But to me, that's not a good reason. Like I said in the opening, this movie reveals more about Shanks than the previous quarter of a century of all of the One Piece combined. And even if there was a simultaneous global release, this isn't how I personally wanted to experience this. I wanted to do it through the medium of manga, aka the core story. Film Red right now is required viewing if you want the full One Piece experience. You are actively missing out on very important story elements if you do not see it, which is a shame because most of the world still can't currently watch it. And what's worse is that some of these reveals actually come from Volume 4 Billion, which is a limited edition item given out to film attendees in Japan. And these movie exclusive volumes are never translated or distributed for sale in other parts of the world. And yeah, this information, it will come up in the manga eventually, but by then the hype will be long over, because we'll have already known for months, potentially even years. Most people outside of Japan are going to learn this information through videos like this or spoilers on social media. So yeah, it just leaves a bit of a bad taste in my mouth. But the good news is we have a palate cleanser. Because one of the most intriguing things that comes to us through Volume 4 Billion, by the way, is that Shanks has his own plan for the new era, which is admittedly a very vague statement, but it's also the first statement of Shanks's mission in this world. And I suppose this should come as no surprise, because actually all of the emperors have had their own plan for a new era. In Kaido's case, he wanted to define the world through war and destruction. With Big Mom, she wanted to unite the world in a very twisted method, primarily taking place via her uterus. With Blackbeard, he's also looking to reshape the world in his own rotund pirate party image. And now Shanks also has his own vision. The question is, does this vision coincide with Luffy's mission, or will their desires come into conflict? Well, as we wait to find out, here is another video which is also about One Piece, and I look forward to seeing you there.